Hi, I'm Maggie Zarowski. I'm on the faculty of the Creative Writing program, and I'm very happy that Lisa Robertson is here today. When I was, about Trevor's age, Lisa Robertson came to my campus with a bunch of marauding Canadians and made me think that Canada was the coolest place on earth, and I was ready to pack my car and leave school and become a Canadian Vancouver poet. But then she moved to Paris. So anyhow, I've had a long history with Lisa Robertson's work, and she's been very inspiring to me, and I'm really glad that she's here tonight. She's here from France, so we're lucky to have her, that she happens to be on a North American tour. And I wanted to thank the Creative Writing Program for making this happen, the Lanier Chair for making this happen, and the Presidential Venture Fund for making this happen. And now I'm going to turn over the mic to our graduate student, Connor Fisher, who will be introducing Lisa tonight. So, thank you so much.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Lisa, for being here, and thanks all of you for really making this room too full. No, it's not too full. No, I'm really excited for this reading. I'm excited to introduce Lisa. Think about geometry. The world displays itself before you not as natural, but as a series of surfaces. The flat plane of a highway, the vertical walls and curves of architecture, a world of visual surfaces, impenetrable to the eye, a world of surfaces waiting to be seen. Imagine bricks beneath fading paint, or the contoured steel of old vehicles, which rust reveals. These are surfaces too, and point to a regression. Each gives way to another, and you never arrive with certainty at the alleged substance that underlies these surfaces. Lisa Robertson's books marvel at this surface and play along its length. Her book-length poems form ways of knowing and of articulating whatever we call real as lines of poetry skip and stagger down the page. Robertson's lines eye enjambment and the long line from the apparently structured stand of the sentence. I think of Gertrude Stein, another writer occupied with both the sentence and the surface. In Stein's essay, Composition as Explanation, she famously writes, "Beginning again and again is a natural thing, even when there is a series. Beginning again and again, explaining composition and time is a natural thing." We can read each surface as a beginning, or each beginning as a surface. The page of a book, the flatness of a line of poetry as an equal surface. Forever not static, beginning and beginning again. The question here is doubled. What are these surfaces and what makes them move? For this, I think it's helpful to turn to a different field, tectonic theory. This is where it gets really good, though. The rigid outer layer of the Earth, the crust, right, comprises 20 massive and juxtaposed tectonic plates. These plates are the grounding for all of Earth's continents and oceans. When you typically think of the surface of the planet, continents, and oceans, these things, in fact, cling to the plates. Beneath the crust, the Earth is plastic. This plastic boils as surface below our surface below our surface. Rising magma presses at the uncemented boundaries between tectonic plates to release its heat, and the plates are shifted and jostled by this superheated force. The surface or crust shows instability. If magma separates two plates, two others are violently pushed together. At times of severe intersection, one plate will push the other under itself, right? They go in a process called subduction. The depressed plate loses definition and melts into plastic magma. Solid crust returns to the Earth's core to be heated. I hope that's clear. The plates hit together and they barely near each other. The bottom one is subducted, it melts and becomes magma, which then rises to hit the plates and push them apart again. I'm not arguing for a tectonic interpretation of Robertson's books or arguing that the two map onto one another. Rather, tectonic plates and magma provide an already real analogic model of surfaces, their motion and creation. Finally, I would be remiss in this introduction if I didn't mention the utopic, one of Robertson's, as I read it, main concerns in both poetry and prose. The utopic is, of course, another surface that we crucially, right, as readers, move towards. We imagine towards what we have not realized and cannot articulate, although it is close by, perhaps just under our feet. Hélène Cixous speaks of figures that are impossible at the present time. She asks, quote, do the abnormal ones, madmen, deviants, neurotics, women, drifters, jugglers, tumblers, do these abnormal ones anticipate the culture to come, repeat the past culture, or, I think, express and constantly present utopia? Lisa Robertson was born in Toronto and lived for many years in Vancouver. She is the author of 4 books that we've got in the back and many others, including Ours Boat and Cinema of the Present. Please help me welcome Lisa Robertson.
Connor, great intro. I think we could just sit and listen to you for a long time. I mean, I say that it's about me. No, it was really, really a great text you just read us. Thank you. And thank you, Maggie, for organizing this and getting me here, and Christine for just being a fabulous administrator of the nitty-gritty. How to get to the art museum, how to get on the shuttle. She worked it all out. I put my hands into an idea. I had to do it laying across the hotel bed near the shears or sitting in the corner chair observing. I'm getting the feeling of all those rooms now, the rooms that were entire structures and the rooms that were parts of structures. First, I had to choose, and I chose these words and staying. Now my idea of time keeps changing, and that's what this is about. The time in rooms becoming my body near the window. What I want to say is I've been the transparent instrument of certain chemicals, and it's excellent. Being written into a potency with any budget at all. The way suddenly the script stopped and there I was, getting voracious again, still writing in a notebook, loving my city like a stranger. Now I'm thinking only time is style, all those leaves opening as bodies specific to themselves. People ask why are poems green, and this is the reason. Next, I realized that all along it's been my body that I don't understand. I just have to describe what it means, supernatural, negative, and sexual, and blooming on one side. It's fierce, and then it's tired. The dog lies on the lawn eating apples, me crouched in the luxurious secret, whatever I have been building, Venicava threading to atmosphere, so as ruffling, everything quiet, rocked only by hazard, fate, sleeping. Like a weak church flung across the matter that they scarcely are. Each dandy stands prepared to dispose herself, stands sutured to her animal mortality. to make philosophy say the hummingbird. The work will be called The Linguistics of the Hormone. As for the completely human and dandiacal gland, transcorporeal and transhistorical, it became literature, and the body is impersonal, in contradiction, which is form. And then the experience of loathing. The lust of the eyes rarely obeys anything. Archive of the cinema of the present, including poverty, illness, death, and brutality, building and action interpenetrating in courtyards and stairways. Then the superabundant concept lapses into notoriety. She dies. 4 mirrored panels adorned with flowers rest on the floor and lean against a wall upon which is projected a time-lapse video of sunlight moving across the same wall. What it has to do with sentences. It is the general system of the formation and transformation of borders. It is simultaneously an aesthetic of perception and an ethic of conduct, these being inseparable. Sometimes, to make some female documents, analogy must be applied. Sometimes I feel excited to be choosing. I say I would like philosophy and housework to frame the beautiful machine that contemplates us as I think in these letters. If I go home to this one emotion, to lovingly read obedience with specific improvised spiritual liberty, that is, I hear weakness speak between sexuality and friendship in the material bodily lower stratum, the entire system of degradation and travesty, the relation to social and historical transformation, the element of relativity and beginning, the extreme difficulty in separating out external compulsion from the experience of desire, the deafening panting of desire where masquerades, orgies, processions, allegories dissolved. I offered my substance to an interpretive convention. I was a girl so I could experience their luxury in the acoustic gland, in my own phonographic experience. In 1994, in a different layer, in order to become exchangeable in Christian Latin, in a passive sense, in an act which is both penetrative and a seepage in the Western lyric, in a sentence and into the game of mourning, between wood and water, in a fair meadow by a river, sit in a shady seat. This is indexical work. Error becomes the body. Toxins. Go now. Recite your poem to your aunt. I threw myself to the ground. Where were you in the night? In a school among the pines. What was the meaning of the dream? A rough clay bottle, a carved wooden salt box with a swivel lid, a tin traveling trunk painted green. What would feel like home? What would a school feel like? I haven't yet been satisfied. Let's organize a pageant. Many boys dressed as nymphs, each carrying an olive branch. What do you see? I'm not looking out the window. Everything is half finished. Where is my seagull? There. Walking between the field and the last houses at 10 p.m., holding the lilacs aloft like a torch, its vital sense of pause. Everything will be hesitation, the acts of transposition, muscular, tactile, olfactory, where the image itself senses. The pinky moon was swishing, all quivering, flanked, heaves, vomits, sniffs her vomit, looks to the horizon, sniffs the air, standing still, looking, ears erect. She was fluttering, falling, fundamentally somatic, fanning like hearts, a distant name in an exotic and privileged setting. Muccia Prada, for example, pulsing upwardly post-metaphysical, and if I sit at my desk in my big coat, it's because words are cold. Now, the glorious suture, or the philosophy of the tree. The tree doesn't have a body. This means when it comes to the need for changing, the tree just waits. It takes all my art to live beside a tree with uncaused devotion and the abandonment of determinism, and I am sad. When I learned grief, its arms changed into the forelegs of an animal, and bark climbed upwards to sheath its hips. I also longed to be under that bark. I longed for my own hoofs. Then I threw off my green coat and I clenched my hands and I throve, and thriving shamed me. Which brings about a beautiful idea. In history, there is always someone, and there is what someone has made. A polder of half-scale kitchen chairs and used file folders and research as pleasure. This slight revolt distributes itself froth-like over a social surface, and it is large enough to hold everything. It is the liberation of matter. What does that look like? I want to know too, but I think it's not optical. I dream of running, escaping into the cornfield. Inside the cornfield, I find tiny, battered civilizations. They give me something to do. How does it work? Listening to Tom Jones on vinyl and reading Carlyle? Why didn't I say emotion? Why did I say documents? I used the language of a Baroque politics. That was a real lie. Waking up in cabins in 1979. Is the polder of happiness like that? The long slash of pure gold opening up behind the utility shed, shabby and powerless, the low lichen, the deep fog. How does it work? That time we called our theory toxins, we became adepts of its excellence. We thought our city would be a place, but it is a leak. And I will feel shame, mortal shame that I am not a tree. How can I make time out of toxins? We were eating these huge boiled flowers. We were always running away from our bodies, and then we weren't. Mostly my sex was blind and stupid, and this was a way to live. The mystic who's in love with time eats an idealized meal. Or quite indifferently, lust returns. as brutal as the impersonal damp, the non-human body of the damp, feeding the stove of God. Health is unlegislated. It unfurls raw on the table. The extent to which its meaning does not exist ripens 1,000 years past. The movement, just outside perception, transverses limbs, skin, organs, hair, as if it were the purpose of this sentiment not to be expressed. Its scale is unknown but pervasive. The one that goes cack, cack, cack. The one that whinnies like a colt at the back of the field. Perhaps they have plundered the mediocrity of capital to parody it as sensation. The great elaborate theme crumples slowly, heavily, elaborately, nudging forward against the picture plane like a non-supernatural experience that transfigures things by way of fit, drape, weight, mode of fastening, unstoppable reverie, and overdetermination. Sometimes one is an elephant, leaving physics behind for cosmology. Sometimes the body is quiet in its great effort to avoid equilibrium. The seam. 4:16 in the afternoon in the summer of my 52nd year. I'm lying on the bed in the heat, wondering about geometry. As the deafening, uninterrupted volume of desire bellows, rolls, roars, mournfully laments, like a starling that has flown into glass. These are two things I want to remember permanently. The dog straining diagonally after the hare at dusk last night and the glittering disco sky. I'm no longer afraid of being misunderstood when I state the old men's docile gadgetry. I don't buy it. What suits me better is to stargaze or to lie in stylish baths. Now it's time to return to the sex of my thinking. How long do I get? A fly moves across the pages of an open book. The pages are quivering. I want stimulants, relaxants, hallucinogens. I'm not good at order. The men who tremble a little bit while speaking about passivity, they're all right. I could compare them to a song. You should live twice in time were I contingent upon your heart, your spleen, or embody the spate, then collapse of love, the living creature. To add gravitas, I am alone transcribing. If you can never be mine, I'll get some Swinburne. There was the sense of women as impairment's ability. That's how it fell. Perilous, unoptional. It was difficult to sing. Using Ovid, maybe, you'd lay your tongue across my art. Loved face. The poem is a hormone. I have no idea what song means that polishes the heart. We press out these voices from the inmost parts to be able to start. Sometimes desire awakens the ears of a whole crowd with copious particularity, with the urgent motions of membranes, with the mystic dialectic of toxins and hormones, more hormones, less toxins, less hormones, more toxins, movement between toxins and hormones, and also their confusion. For hormones can act as toxins, and toxins can also act as hormones, so that the fear of death falls away for a minute. Venus breaks a dew at the borders of everything. Right now, when I think of her, I have no problem with the feminine pronoun. I'm stupid against its animate insult, me with my scaly feet, my rubbed thorax, my vibrating wings, my periodic radiation, my repetitive chant and cunt. A fly moves across the pages of an open book. The wind rifles the pages slightly. I think of girls saying I in novels, people saying we in plazas and restaurants, students and cops. People's mouths are brutal, portable things. The pronoun is gratuitous expenditure. I was a daughter in blouses, a sucker in stairwells. I was the only human to ever feel desire for the fly moving across the open book, for the shimmer of gnats above a frugal terrace. I'm stupid against flowers, quotas. I'm stupid against tables. All my cells bust. I got a little shipwreck, a frugal little ship, shipwrecked on a decorated terrace. It's hard not to play this as testimony. I was a sucker in blouses. I was the only human to ever say we. I sat at frugal tables and I undertook the ceremony of brutality or pronouns. I knelt. I busted testimony. I was a shimmer of gnats at noon. I was living in a hut as a form of protest, and it didn't matter. I lied and I held it together, and the light was for my body, and the fly was a shipwreck. To thee I went, but I didn't. I sheltered my lesion. Some are masters of desire, all deferral and expletives, using the word triumphant while they lounge in their marriages. To choose, to think, to mean, to gather, to eagerly pursue the shimmer that can't cohere above the table, to occupy the silent terrace as the flowers just pour upwards, to be organized towards sugar, why not? But then we would become enemies. Innovation is not a quality. I want you to really mean it. Truth is, everything that isn't poetry bores me. And within the problem of lamentation is my perennial resistance sensation. I'm telling you things you already know to keep myself intact. There is no everyday life. That was a bribe from the masters. I've taken down the curtains so I can watch the foliage move. To be accurate, to be objective, my idea of myself relates to landscape's unimagined achievement. An event I never sought will shift through the frail silence as I sit in a chair not moving. We have loved nothing brutally. The DNA of loss moves through leaves. Some hidden oxidant of vibration played on a disintegrating cassette tape to the tune of You Are the Tenderness of Strangers Half Sleeping on a Train. Gods still move by river. The flat warehouses are countries. And I wonder about silt and trees and chemicals as boats are loaded. What if the body does not signify? Its wee lost cluster starts to fade, the skin opening to the moisture of the season. Its immunity is landscape. Here, by landscape, I mean political economy. To have a bath, to write in bed in a hotel, so obvious and so easy, an entire day till the light starts to fade, to arrive at the long duration of an instability. How to walk with this till the end, speak its tongue like a guest at the discontinuous table. My hands shake, lilacs are everywhere. This fundamental torsion, so thoroughly unskirtable, There will never again be sex in 1983, and I don't mind really. Must I fear formlessness? If it weren't for this, I'd be free as body organs cast in metal, divinatory objects. To decorate time, I like to spit from moving trains. So much can be passed over in avoidance of the rupture. The driver of this team of 6 horses plowing is a woman, cotton sleeves rolled to elbow, hands to straining harness, skinny, capable. My kinship with this woman, her 6 huge horses and the surge of their vitality running through leather into my body. We who have no memories at all mount the pulsing tree in evening. Every desire emits a throw of dice. I start a school called How Can I Live? In my school called How Can I Live, in my theory of appearing, I lay out my costume. We don't belong to culture. We're sunsets. We simplify thought until it resembles stripes. Our skin itches. I beg you, show me something unknowable. I don't believe in this possibility of knowing. Stop hiding from life, we say to ourselves. As for the image, how will it start? The flipped over buses, the strange stuff suspended in the air. While they copulate, they turn their heads towards the east. Tell me now about shame and isolation, the shame that has not even a vocabulary. It distracts us from our purpose. Sometimes I see things and I know right away, like looking someone in the eye. The great health is unknown, gratuitous expenditure towards the material ideal. It is not a metaphor. From now on, everything will be called the middle. Everything will be called the seam. Everything will be called toxins. Everything will be called the great health. Everything will be a hormone. The men. Men deft, men mental, men of loving, men, all men, vile men, virtuous men, sane men from which men, sweet and men of mercy, men making such men said, has each man that sees it, cry as men to the men sensate, conceptual recognition, the men and their poverty speaking to the men is about timeliness, men is about previous palpability from which the problematic politics, adorable and humble, especially young men of sheepish privilege becoming sweet new style. Each man, I could write his poem. He needs no voice. But what would I take from it? Our facades are so minor. What would I begin to say if his words were my poem? I am preoccupied with grace and have started to speak expensively, as in have joys that look like choice, ill-matched to its consequence, as laughter to a fall, bad memory, poorly researched life, the men's cocks and their faces as we do so fall upwards. Men, I'm 39 and my poem, A Purple Scarf of Men, from which men move, men sweet and smooth, men auditorily ignored, men by virtue of men following men, make me tremble. What we refer to as men is any communication we begin to perpetrate a priori, For this man, the men want less and no less than the holding, and thus a spree of men. I address men and their faces and no sheen. From sweet mercy, each man makes deft wounds, makes women and disquietude and something from what I am. What is it to open upwards towards the men hospitably, to make something factless from the spurious craving for men, from most delicate, improbable men, from amorous, spiritual men, from the education of the emotions of men, devotedly from whom I cannot remain indifferent as men. Men, I'm sad I must die. These are beautiful shores. Sensate conceptual recognition, the men and their poverty-speaking language, this theoretical clatter, the pigeons on the ridgepole fluff and fuck and fly off. The funny pathos of men. I salute this. As for the men, we did toss our declinations and conjugations to and fro, as they do who by way of a certain game of men conjugate men. What I saw perfectly. For amongst other things, I could neither mingle nor confound. I could neither reduce this exquisite toil nor teach, but I could entertain, as pure as a Latin tongue, as pure as two of my countrymen, tractable and yielding upon a dark damask. I love it exceedingly, and I satisfy my judgment. Clear and regular, the men being more and more exasperated would go to the shops. The value of the money is changed according to the men who repeat virtue and truth, and things written on coins accordingly. The men change limited constructs into easy patterns. They determine on it. They point to the picture and they nurture their hearts. They find time to analyze conditions frequently. Men's commands are laminated by other methods. At the end of his frontiers, there is left a free, indifferent, and neutral space, which is the sexuality of the men, and they suffer. They commonly harbor their fathers' bodies in themselves and in their marrow. The men have diverse lusters, heady with vibration, whence their opinion. Men, I am shady and terrestrial. I have a friend who knew De Boer. The men are pleased, and their faces open sexually. There is no concrete or eternal thing there. We form attachments, and then we go visiting. I do not mind. I go too. I saunter somewhere. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, speaking language. Sweet new style, I walk as appearing. Everything became what I saw. I pour into the style of the mannequin and moisturize. I pour into the men. I've been changed by men you don't know. Excellently, I am home. The man carrying his thoughts beyond his school, beyond all experience, beyond idealism, the men beyond. I see it everywhere. Their imminent use will not damage me. My place is grasped by my auditor. Their work is a textbook. Without finding the world sufficient, they give it some liberty. To consider the power and domination these bodies have, I suckle them. There is not a man alone, there is not sufficiency nor geometry, but there is beauty and greatness and thirst. The men are enjambed. The men find themselves happy only insofar as they gratify an inclination. They are men of warmth and humor and acute sensitivity, and if I choose to speak of them, it is no trifle. To speak of the men is no trifle. They are both sublime and beautiful, delicate and copious, rolling and touching and rubbing one against another in their most serious actions. But nothing makes them men but their word in the newfound world. I study them more than any other subject, studying hard in this disordered rabble, remembering to drink water, judging soundly like a man the ceremonies and decorations, the opportunities for ornament. Inorganic and misty they exist against gravity, and they fail glamorously their ideal, which is to float in the air without any support, so beautiful and sucking. Let the thought here be planted that the men want to float, just the pink tip of their thing touching the firmament. Whence men that achieve both clarity and embellishment, sur-embroidered with clandestine emotion. Goya painted their eyes into women, thus the psychic life of pigment. The men used to dream about the future, and they dreamt this. It is love they announce. The men flow down the pen and they write. They have only the reticence of intimacy. You really love the men. We do. All men these days would like to wear grief and noise. All men seem to think. In their eyes remains that live burden. I suffer equally. Brief wrath of the men is very long, as if the men had intellect in wings and people's voices. They exist against gravity and they fail. They form precisely and in great density too much information. The men are fragile and finite, involuntary, the men nuzzling the streets of the centuries, the women's names in them moving the women's thighs directly. Perhaps this is the fantasy of men. Their house, like sunlight before delving. Girls in our dresses, print dresses in memory. The light dripping and producing freedom sexually. I have seen the opacity of men. I feel modest about it. The whole prehistory of the water is about timeliness, men, is about previous palpability from which, among a grove of ilex, the problematic politics, adorable young men of sheepish privilege becoming less adorable, I thought words and forgot them. Evening lit the gnat uncommonly. What is left for me to undertake? Our passion to speech in the syllable of the name and a transparency, in the transparency a gland, which is solid and scary. Trashy sweet brain, I give it to them in dry air and summer light. A man could learn a lot from a conchologist. A man could learn amazement. Large free animals with heads of dogs eject form. The men emerge indolently, like last human things, like names. Trashy sweet brain adoring and adoring them. Amazement ejecting form like a gland, trashy. To speech in the middle of dry transparency, its juice there, indolent. Head of a dog, I speak to you now. Head of a boy, I speak out of your mouth and into that olden sweet green. It is for me now to undertake last human things. This is where I speak from the juicy mouth of a man or boy devotedly saying, I am, and it is a song. This is where I tear the cloth. This is where the word falls out in the form of a dog, a black dog, a dog that seems to speak, and what the dog says is poverty is sap. So I lick it up sweetly. Now what do they want? What's sucked is hydromel, and I lick them as they smoke. And these are syllables, these are last things plunging, and my brain adores the form of the world with a decorous amplitude. This is poverty, and it's as false as the poem. False juicy mouth, say anything. Entirely synthetically, I speak to them because everything is poverty, and we call this hydromel. Hydromel in wildness, and hydromel in the form of the world, and hydromel dripping from the face, your face, the face of the men, hydromel filling the boats in the interminable night, sucking hydromel. Call it style, or call it what we do, it's poverty. Because unreasonably I adore them, I utter this word, hydromel. I'm for it, it's what I do. Hydromel violet, hydromel cadmium, hydromel apples. I am ejecting a form for their face. It's for me now to undertake this thing. I have called it men, and now I call it hydromel. I call out hydromel to the men. I take all of their style and I turn it to poverty. Who can say which loses? I call out hydromel to the ladies as false as the gorgeous poem. This is referential stability. This is our passion to speech. Hydromel in the meadows and in the evening light especially. I have plenty, so I give it to them. False human face, men fluttering, men recumbent, married men in cognition, ladies men, men homosexual, men of the true synthetic space, men as glamorous as dew. Your name is a syllable on my face, and I speak it from your own juice. What's prior to cognition? Amazed head of a man, I feed you violets and fall upwards bleeding. I'm making a record of the men as I know them, their hours and their currencies and their simple sex. I'll be their glamorous thing, and then I won't. Their coats are casual. They are entirely casual in their stance, and I paste my record up. When a man rides with a demon, when he transmits and snags, when a man feels his psyche work all over America in its humble way, when he has no obligation, when he marches on, when a man marches on, when he has hideous knowledge and he marches with it in the burnt grass, when men believed so many things, when a man's name is sewn in the label of my coat, when the men face out to sea, lovely, and I think,